Chapter 4. The light was on in the garage. This was no big surprise, and the light was always on in the garage. It was Mr. Bing's workshop. As long as Griffin could remember, his father had been tinkering with some invention in there. But never before had Dad become so obsessed with one of his creations that he quit his engineering job so he could develop it full time. The Smart Pick Fruit Picker of the Future. When Griffin retreated to the garage later that afternoon to escape his parents' arguing, the prototype lay on the workbench. Griffin pressed a button, and the telescoping aluminum shaft whirled outward. He worked the control in the opposite direction, and the pole receded into itself. There was nothing on the market like it. The fruit-safe picking mechanism used padded pinchers and a twisting motion, rather than a cutting blade, for a 0% chance of damaged produce. It was a revolution in agriculture, only who needs a smart pick when there are perfectly good human beings with real hands? Griffin felt guilty for his disloyal thought, yet the common sense of it would not leave him alone. The Bings had bet their entire future on this so-called revolution. Otherwise, Dad would have kept his job, and nobody would be thinking about moving. It was thanks to the smart pick that his parents were in the kitchen right now, tearing their hair over some bill they didn't have enough money to pay. Their raised voices carried throughout the house, bickering, agonizing, sell A to pay for B, cut corners, spend less, economize, economize, economize. And the worst part was there was absolutely nothing Griffin could do about it. Here he was, the man with the plan, and he might as well have been a blob of Play-Doh for all he could help his family. He was too young to get a part-time job. He couldn't even hand over the $60 from the Babe Ruth card without confessing the whole Rockford House escapade. As he set down the smart pick, the pole brushed against the antenna of his father's old black and white TV. For an instant, the 10-inch screen resolved itself into a very familiar face before returning to snow and interface. Huh? Griffin fiddled with the aerial until the picture returned. No, he wasn't seeing things. Grinning out at him were the unmistakable features of Babe Ruth. It was a baseball card from the old Rockford house. He turned up the sound. When I bought the collection, I had no idea, but the instant I laid eyes on it, I mean, wow. Griffin recognized the breathlessness of the voice, just like the speaker had run a marathon. The sunny side-up eyes of Swindle Palomino appeared over the small screen. What's a guy who sells overpriced Star Trek dolls doing on TV? Griffin wondered. The dealer stood in the courtyard of Palomino's Emporium, holding up the Babe Ruth card for a group of reporters and cameramen. There are a lot of similar cards out there, one woman was saying. What makes this one so special? It was printed in 1920, Palomino explained. Ruth's first season as a Yankee. But look at the picture. A cameraman zoomed in. That's a Red Sox uniform, he observed. Palomino nodded enthusiastically. Right. The top dog bakery people wanted to compete with the cigarette and chewing gum companies that dominated the baseball card market. The presses were already rolling before the trade went through. They were able to call back most of the run, but 200 copies were released into circulation. Only a handful are known today. That's what makes this card especially valuable. Griffin felt his blood boil. That liar! That cheat! He said it was a fake, a knockoff from the 60s. He invented a whole story and about a solid border instead of a striped one. How much is it worth, Wendell? Another reporter piped up. What are you selling it for? Gentlemen, gentlemen, the dealer chuckled, obviously loving every minute. This isn't the kind of item you slap a price tag on and stick in the window. This card will be sold to the highest bidder of Washington's annual sports memorabilia auction on October 17th. The opening bid will be, he paused dramatically, $200,000. Griffin nearly choked. The reporters were astonished. You think you can get that much? Asked a woman. I think I can get more, Palomino replied smugly. Specimens from the famous T206 set frequently sell for six-figure amounts. The legendary 1909 Honus Wagner card recently went for over $2 million. This misprint showing the Bambino in a Red Sox uniform is just as rare. The people at Washington's think it could be the second card in history to break the $1 million barrier. $1 million? Griffin couldn't believe it. Oh, it was right there in the palm of my hands, enough to solve our money problems for life. I'm going over to Ben's, Griffin hollered in the direction of the kitchen. He didn't wait on an answer from his parents, who were still wrangling over the checkbook. An argument wouldn't be happening if not for S. Wendell Palomino. He jumped on his bike and pedaled down the driveway. He hoped Mom and Dad were too preoccupied to look out the window and noticed that he was turning left, away from the Slovak house. He had another destination in mind. He arrived at Palomino's Emporium just as the press conference was breaking up. The reporters and crew were filing out the opening in the fence, under the watchful eye of a Doberman Pinscher. "Excuse me, kid," a sound man brushed past Griffin, bumping him with a microphone boom. Suddenly, Griffin realized that he had no idea what he should do next. He may have been the man with the plan, but he had no further than getting himself to the store. What could he say? That's not his card. It's mine? Technically, that wasn't true. Griffin had sold it and had been paid in full. Yes, Palomino had tricked him by implying the card wasn't real. It was shady, underhanded, unethical, and even sleazy. But sleaze by itself wasn't against the law. Besides, what if nobody believed him? He had no proof that he'd been the one to find the card, except for Ben's say-so. Adults don't listen to 11-year-olds. At the town meeting, they had refused to sit through a 3-minute presentation about a skate park. Why would they accept the word of 2 kids when $1 million hung in the balance? When the media people had gone, Griffin ventured up to the store. The Doberman blocked the front door, its teeth bared. On top of everything else, that was intimidating about this place, add one attack dog. "That's okay, Luther," came a voice from inside. Reluctantly, the Doberman backed away, and Griffin entered. Palomino was in his usual spot behind the counter. With effort, he tore his attention away from the baseball card in his hand. "What can I do for you, sonny boy?" "You knew," Griffin accused him. "The minute I brought you that thing, you could tell it was fake." "Wait," the dealer said. "You're not saying that this piece of junk you sold me was this card? I found this in a collection I bought in an estate sale on West Coast." "Good luck. It happens. Somebody up there must like me." "So where's my card?" Griffin demanded. "Show me my worthless piece of junk next to your Babe Ruth masterpiece." "I already sold it. Took a bath on it, too. You were lucky I gave you as much as I did." Griffin stared at him, blown away by the sheer dishonesty of the man. This wasn't some kid. This was an adult, the owner of a business. How could he act this way? Palomino spoke once more. A word to the wise: the world is a big, fat, scary place filled with people who will chew you up and spit you out if you give them half a chance. Consider this your first life lesson. "I came to you for a fair deal," Griffin sputtered. "Oh, come down off your high horse," the dealer sneered. "You were after money, just like I was after money. Everybody's after money. Some of us are just a little better at it, that's all." Griffin's eyes narrowed. "You won't get away with this." Palomino laughed. "That's where you're wrong, sonny boy. You've heard that possession is 9/10 of the law. In the collectible games, it's 10/10 of the law. If it isn't in your hand, you don't own it. Now get out of my store." He stuck a fat finger in his mouth and let out a sharp whistle. With a growl that was more of a roar, Luther burst into the shop. The Doberman sprang at Griffin, who backed away, colliding painfully with a display case of Yoda action figures. The big dog's snapping jaws were just inches from his trembling chin. "Easy, Luther," Palomino commanded with a chuckle. "Our friend was just leaving." The dog withdrew a half step, but no more. Terrified, Griffin managed to sidestep the Yodas and retreat in the direction of the exit. "We appreciate your business. Please do not come again," the dealer heckled gleefully as Griffin turned and ran out the door. Back on his bike, Griffin struggled to wrestle his spinning thoughts into some kind of order. Number 1, I've been cheated. Picturing the sentence as it might have appeared on one of his famous plans made him feel a little more in control. Cheated. That was exactly what had happened to him. and a lot more than a baseball card. $1 million to develop the smart pick. Even if the invention turned out to be a bust, that money would allow Dad to find a new job and start over. This was about the entire future of the Bing family. It was time for the man with the plan to embark on the most important plan of his life. But what could that possibly be? A lawsuit? The Bings could barely pay their mortgage. Where were they going to get money for lawyers? No, there was only one way to get the card back. Palomino had stolen it from him. Griffin had to fight fire with fire.